Okay, looks like I'm live. So today the plan is to look at LXD and how it integrates with MAAS. So MAAS is machine as a service. It's another canonical product. It's mostly used for bare metal machine provisioning and management, but it can also interact with LXD and with virtual machines. So we're going to be taking a bit of a look at that. First thing first, let's jump into a terminal here, make that a bit bigger. So it's the same system I used to demo running Ubuntu desktop inside of virtual machines. So we still have those virtual machines and containers left around. Let's just clean things up quickly because we don't really need those right now and they're just making things slower. There we go. It's just gonna clean all of that up. And now that everything is nice and clean, let's launch a new, let's just do the official images, Ubuntu 2004, and call that container MAAS. So MAAS itself runs just fine inside of LXD container. There's no reason to use a virtual machine for that. So that's what we're going to be doing now. So just need to download that image, which apparently I didn't have already, so it's going slightly slower than I'd like. The Ubuntu 2010 released yesterday, so I can expect some of those servers to be a bit slow right now. Actually slow enough that I'm just gonna give up on this particular one, and we'll use the other image server that has slightly different images, but is quite a bit faster. There we go. The most important difference between the two images is that those images are not really official Ubuntu images. They're not tested by Canonical before they're being put out. And also have some slight differences, like snapd is not installed inside them, which is actually slightly inconvenient in this case since we want to install MAAS and using the MAAS snap. So we need to go fix that. So it's going to be installing snapd in there. There we go. And with snapd installed, now we can snap install MAAS. Here we go. Just installing the Go snap, then installing MAAS itself, and we should be good to go. MAAS has a web interface. That's how most people interact with it. So let's open Firefox. Okay. And just check here. Okay, so MAAS is now installed. Let's get the IP address of that particular container. So it's that. And go look at there. I believe it's 5280/MAAS. Or maybe not. Let's go look what's going on in there. Okay, so we've got the MAAS supervisor running. How about the rest of MAAS starts too? That'd be nice. Well, let's see if anything failed. It's usually a good start. Nope. Okay. What's going on with the MAAS now? Still active. Okay, that should be a good sign. I mean, we mostly see the supervisor running. I should probably just look at the install instructions, frankly, because I've not installed MAAS from scratch from the snap in a little while, so it's quite possible that there are some extra steps that I just completely forgot. Okay, install snap. Oh yeah, that is what I forgot. So it got installed, but never actually configured. What does it do? Initialize MAAS in specified mode. So because we're not gonna be splitting between like having a region controller that manages multiple racks with different rack controllers. We're not going to be doing any of that. So we're going to want region plus rack, I suspect. For non-production environment on this machine, you can just snap install masters DB. Otherwise, it needs to oh yeah, okay, so it still connects to an external database. All right, so we need to install like Postgres. Or we can just do what it says and install the masters DB snap and use that. The MAAS I usually interact with is the one we use for LXD development, and that one does have a proper Postgres database alongside it, and was actually using the deb, which would then transition to the snap, which is why I'm not particularly familiar with how to do that initial setup. So, I mean, it's literally a copy-paste from the init command, so that's easy enough. MAAS URL, that seems right. So it actually gives us here the URL we need to open in Firefox, which I think is exactly what I opened earlier, except it wasn't running yet. Okay, let's start up. Anyway, oh, I decided to open with Chrome for some reason. That's special. Anyway, so we're just waiting for the database to be initialized at this point. I'm hoping won't take super long. Once that's done, we'd expect this to start working, which it's not yet. Okay, so it looks like the masters DB is actually a like snap including Postgres, which gets you just a basic single database deployment. All right, so MAAS is now installed. We could do we're gonna just do a local admin setup, so we just need that MAAS create admin command. Yeah, anytime. The other option is to use external authentication with Candid and RBAC, which is definitely not something we want to do for just a simple local setup of MAAS. Okay, so we can actually let it import SSH keys for us, which is nice. It's not gonna do me much good in this case because that virtual machine doesn't actually have an SSH key, but it would have imported everything now. All right. 5240, okay, close enough, close enough. And here we go. So this is MAAS, and can now log in, don't save, it's fine. We already see that my user has an imported SSH key. What we should probably do is actually just create a new SSH key. Yeah, whatever, just do the default. And then import that into MAAS so that when it deploys systems for us afterwards, we can just SSH into them. Okay, so SSH keys are all done. Now go to dashboard. And now we've got a nice and empty MAAS. So name of the region, don't really care. Connectivity, we could do something different if we wanted different DNS or different archive servers. Because I'm in North America, let's actually do US dot for both of them. That tends to be a fair bit faster around here. Images we wish to sync, so we're gonna be doing, let's do 1804 and 2004. We'll only do Intel 64-bit. Update selection. So that should start downloading images for us. Okay, that's all good. It's downloading. Continue setup. And here we go. So now we're on the main view of MAAS that shows all the machines we have, which is currently none at all. That's perfectly fine. The other thing we need to do now is actually create a network for MAAS to operate on. If we go back here and get out of our MAAS container and we look at the network list, we see we're currently on LXDBR0. which is the default bridge we got out of LXD and it last time I did the setup in that VM. That bridge is perfectly fine. It's got DHCP and radar advertisement for IPv6. It's got IPv4, IPv6 with NAT configured. We don't want MAAS to directly run on that because MAAS will operate its own DHCP server and that would conflict with what we have. Instead, what we're going to be doing is create a new bridge. Let's call it MAAS BR0. And in this instance, what we're going to do is we'll still let LXD just set up IPv4, IPv6 for us. Like that. Now if we do a list, we see it picked a new subnet. That's fine. But we don't want DHCP service on there, otherwise we're going to have problems. So what we'll do is do MAAS BR0 and do IPv4 DHCP false, IPv6 DHCP false. Right. And if I could type properly, that would work a lot better. There we go. So at that point, if we were to launch a container on there, it's not going to get an IP. There's no DHCP running anymore. But what we need to do now is actually attach the our MAAS container here onto that network too. So let's do this with device add. We'll add this to the instance called MAAS. We'll call it device ETH1. It's a network card. And we want that connected to MAAS BR0. And again, we want the interface name ETH1 inside. Now, I'm really bad at typo today, so it's MAAS, not MAAS. There we go. Let's go back inside our MAAS container. I'm still used to using, is it NetTools and NetUtils? NetTools. I'm still used to using fconfig instead of IP, just an old habit. Okay, so we see ETH0, ETH1 is there and not up at all. What we're gonna do is just add basic configuration for ETH1. As I said, it doesn't have DHCP, so there's no point in trying. Address, so we're gonna set the static address. I can't remember if it's address or addresses. I think it might be addresses. And we need the right subnet, which I forgot. So what is it? Okay, 1056.61. Okay, so 1056.61. Let's give .10 for MAAS, and subnet is /24. So we do that. We don't actually need to specify a gateway in this case, because we'll still keep ETH0 and using that as the gateway for MAAS. That should be fine. So let's just save that and do netplan apply. Okay, so we've got an IP on there now. If I refresh an LXC list here, we'll see we've got now an IP on both ETH0 and ETH1, and that should be fine. I'm not completely sure what our MAAS will just notice, so just to be safe, let's just restart MAAS. And now back to the web interface. So that usually notices reasonably quickly when things are back online. Or we can just keep refreshing. Should be starting up. Yep. And here we go. So we're gonna go and configure some networks. First of all, let's look at controllers. So controllers effectively the MAAS systems themselves. We only have one. We only have one rack because it's just playing in a virtual machine. It's fine. Here we can see what's in there. So we see some hardware information and CPU limits, well, amount of memory and everything. We've not actually set up any limit on that particular container. I guess we could. Let's just do that. So limit CPU, let's give it 2 CPUs, and memory, I don't know, let's give it 4 gigs. And to avoid issues, let's give it up to 5,000 processes. Okay. Let's see just how quickly that refreshes. See if it pulls the information live or if it's, no, it doesn't. So I guess we need to restart MAAS if we really wanted that to refresh, but it's just a detail. So we can see what it's connected to. All right, there we go. So we see both our 10.116 subnet, which is the LXD BR0, and we see the 1056.61, which is MAAS BR0. We don't want it to mess with this one. It can mess as much as it wants with this one. So let's see if we can configure that. Let's rename it. Fabric name. Okay, fine. Let's actually call it MAAS BR0. It might be easier for us to figure it out. Okay. Then we see the different subnets that are on that network. So the 1056.61 here. And let's try to edit this one. So let's call that MAAS IPv4. So we could have MAAS like automatically scan for whatever is available on it. Doesn't really matter. There's not going to be anything other than what's deployed on it, so it's fine. Managed allocation means that MAAS will take control of the subnet, which is exactly what we want it to do. It's perfectly fine. It does ask for the gateway IP because it doesn't have an IP on it, so it doesn't actually know what it is. So we're just going to specify it. I think we can keep DNS empty and it should work. If it doesn't, we're going to go and configure something and then save that. Okay. Let's go back and let's do IPv6 as well. So same deal, MAAS IPv6. Managed and everything's good. The gateway is gonna be the first address on it, so let's start. And same thing, we won't touch DNS here. Save that. Now if we go look at our work, first of all, let's just go back to this view. Okay. So now we see we've got MAAS BR0, we've got our two subnets, they've got names, MAAS IP4, MAAS IPv6. It still shows the DHCP as disabled, which is a bit odd. Is it on a per VLAN basis? We do not. Yes, it is. Okay, so we're gonna enable DHCP. So we provide DHCP directly from the rack controller. There are no other subnets or anything on there. So we're gonna do show the default ranges look fine. Enable. I wonder if we need to do it again to set up the other range, or if it just does it for IPv6. How that works. Okay, so I guess we do reserve dynamic range. Huh. That seems a bit more manual than I would like, but okay. So let's do the equivalent for v6. So we're gonna give it also 191 to 254. Let's see if that works. Failed to detect valid IP address. Okay. Well, I guess that doesn't work that way then. What does that one let you do? No, okay, that's to reserve outside of MAAS's own use. Okay, anyway, we've got DHCP running here. There's nothing really to configure on there, and reconfiguring the DHCP doesn't really do as much good. So let's just leave it at that. Now if we go back to the controller, so this time we should see that MAAS provided, okay. Oh, and we actually do see the DHCP v6 is enabled too. Okay, it was just the UI being a bit confusing here. So that's perfectly fine. We've got v4, we've got v6 with MAAS provided, MAAS DHCP on it, and absolutely nothing running on the interface on our traditional LXD BR0 bridge. So that's perfectly fine. We could look at logs and events and some other stuff on there, but there shouldn't be anything else we need to touch at that spot. You could go to subnets directly to see, again, the MAAS BR0 with the VLAN we've configured and the current allocations, but that should be all fine. We're not gonna mess with AZs because when you have a single rack anyway. Images, they should have synced by now, hopefully. Yep, we've got 1804, 2004. That's been imported, all good. Now onto DNS, so that's where you can actually set up a domain. Right now it's set to .maas, which is probably good enough. So anyway, let's go to the interesting part where we'll actually add some machines. So MAAS is effectively set up at this point. We've got a working network. It's supposed to provide DHCP on it. And we've got LXD that can run containers in VMs. MAAS doesn't really understand, MAAS can't provision containers because they're not DHCP enabled. So like you can't pixie boot a container, but you can definitely pixie boot VMs. So let's set up some of those. I'm just gonna call it, say, VM01. We want a virtual machine and want it to be empty. And that should be pretty much it. Actually, let's do something different. Let's create a new profile called MAAS. On that profile, we're gonna be adding the root device. So that's the root disk where we store all the data. The pool for that is gonna be the default pool. I think that's all we need. Right, we need path equals / to just say that it's the root disk. There we go. So now and then we need to do, let's add a network card. So we do onto MAAS ETH0 network device. The network is MAAS BR0 and we'll call it ETH0. All right, so now if I go and look at the two different profiles we have, we've got the default profile that LXD set up originally. This one just has an ETH0 device attached to LXD BR0 and it's got the root disk. Now MAAS has something very similar with ETH0, MAAS BR0 also attached to the root disk. So the main difference is just we attach to a different bridge. The other thing we can do, let's just do edit on that one, is for virtual machines, unless you specify differently, the root disk is gonna be 10 gigs large. That's not a lot, so we're gonna just bump that up a bit and let's go with 20 gigs. Okay. Now what we can do is create a new VM. Might as well launch it, it's fine. So we'll launch a VM, call it VM01. It's gonna be, sorry, I forgot a tiny detail. We want to always pixie boot. So we want the boot priority on the NIC to be high. That will just ensure that even if there's something on disk, we still boot from the NIC instead. That's important because MAAS needs to have a way to redeploy a virtual machine. And it can't do that if it doesn't network boot. So forget that detail, just fixing that now. For anyone who wants to see the whole thing, that's what it looks like. And now we can finally do a launch. Our VM01 is empty, so there's no source image, it's a virtual machine, and we use the MAAS profile. So there's a question around whether MAAS can deploy virtual machines or also containers. MAAS can only deploy virtual machines. But it can understand containers and manage IP and DNS for them. So we'll show that a tiny bit later. For now, that virtual machine has now been created and started. So let's just look at what it does. So we're saying that it's effectively pixie booted. It's showing booting under MAAS direction. So the first time you boot a VM, pixie boot a VM against MAAS or a physical machine against MAAS, it will do a very quick initial check run, if you wish, which will make it show up in that list. But just take a tiny bit for that. Once it's in that list, you can do some initial config, so effectively a commissioning run, which will start it up and go through checking hardware, like making sure that, well, pulling the storage information and network information, validating that the network is the network that MAAS thinks it is. And once that's all good, it's marked as being available inside MAAS. We can go configure storage and network the way we want it, and then you can deploy whatever you want on it. So right now the VM just booted the basic Ubuntu system from MAAS. It's just running completely off the network with nothing on disk to just make sure that it can actually interact with MAAS, and then it will shut down. Once it's shut down, we'll have a dummy entry effectively in MAAS that we can edit and then use that to deploy whatever we want. That shouldn't take very long. Seeing it that it's doing all that stuff through CloudInit. So CloudInit is running in background and running a bunch of tests, and yeah, right now updating. package lists, so it can grab some stuff if it needs to. Let's see if MAAS has actually started showing the entry yet. No, it hasn't. While that's going on, let's just add a few more, because like one VM is fun, but would be better if we had, I don't know, let's do 5. So just gonna copy paste the command and do again. Let's do VM2 and then 3, 4, 5. Mind you, I'm a bit lazy, so I'm just gonna do this. And let it sort it out. So that virtual machine is now pretty much done with its initial run, and we're seeing it show up here. MAAS doesn't know what it's called, so it's showing with that random name right now. It's best to rename it to its actual name in LXD, just so you've got an idea as to what it is, otherwise it's gonna get very confusing very quickly. If you don't rename it fast enough that you remember what it is, you can always line it up with the MAC address, but that's always a bit more annoying than it needs to be. So with it still running its commissioning run, right now it's analyzing the network to see what the switches are, because there are no actual switches, it's just a virtual bridge on Linux. It's not gonna find much, but it will still work. There's a question around LXD profiles and kind of where they're coming from. So LXD profiles must exist in the LXD database. They're just a bunch of YAML. But you can totally distribute those in source control if you want, for example. So one thing I could do here with my MAAS profile, I could just write it down as maas.yaml. Then if you create a new profile called blah, I can do edit blah and then load up the YAML. And now if I look at what blah looks like, it's gonna look like the MAAS profile. So that's how you would easily like store and restore different systems. There's also a way to actually copy profiles between LXD remotes directly. And so VM01 is now ready. It's in MAAS. It's been commissioned. We see it detected 1 CPU, 1 gig of RAM, which is the default on LXD. And 20 gigs of storage. What it doesn't know how to do at this point is how to manage it. There's no way for MAAS to actually turn it on at this point. If you start it, it's gonna be in manual mode and just ask you to do it, which is not very convenient. There's a way around that, but it requires LXD to listen on the network and to have a trust password. The current LXD has no configuration for that, so we're gonna just do it. Let's configure for it to listen on 8443 on every address and set a trust password of, let's go with blah as an easy one. Now you can choose power type, LXD virtual system, then the IP address of LXD. So in this case, we're gonna go with IP address being this one, 1056.61.1. The instance name in this case is the same as the name in MAAS, so it's VM01, and the password we used, which is blah. And we're done. Now this machine currently has 1 CPU, 1 gig of RAM. That's not a lot. Let's change that. So we're gonna modify the profile and do limits CPU, and let's be generous and give 4 CPUs and 8 gigs of RAM. So each VM using that profile now has 4 CPUs, 8 gigs of RAM. MAAS won't know that. The only way it can know that is if you commission it, which is alright, we're gonna do that anyway. So, I mean, it's a virtual machine, so MAAS can run a number of tests during commissioning. There's really not much point in validating the hard drive is in good shape. So you can just skip that because it's a virtual machine. There's never gonna be any useful result from that. Okay, and we've got our 4 other VMs here. As I mentioned earlier, it's a bit annoying because you get like a random name and you don't really know who they are. I think I'm lucky enough that the IPs, I dumped most of them earlier. So I know that 192 is VM02. So we can just go and rename that one to VM02. Okay. Then we've got 193, which is VM03, and 194 is VM04. So it works out. They booted in the right order, so that's sequential. It's nice. Let's just rename them all. So VM03. VM04. And VM05. Okay, and now for all of them, we're just gonna need to go and configure that that power control bit. So let's just open them all in different tabs. Go and head into configuration for all of them. Configuration, and let's go. This one is 05. So IP address. Let's just copy paste that, VM05, and we shouldn't need to enter the password anymore because MAAS will have already added its TLS key to LXD. You needed the first time around. After that, anything else you add, you don't need to. And let's do that one too. VM03, save, and last one. Okay. I'm gonna now select all the new ones. So just to check, LXD at this point should just have 01 running. Yep. All the other ones are stopped. We're just gonna select them all as one shot and do commission on all of them. And again, let's ignore that script and just run. So we see they're all moving on to commissioning now. With the VM01 being quite a bit more advanced, already gathering information, doing commissioning, you could actually go on there and you should be able to get the live view of what's going on here. There we go. So it's currently running a test that runs for about 50 seconds that just validates the network. So we've got another 20 seconds or so to go on that one before it's done. Then the last test, I think, is pretty quick, and the VM is gonna be ready. So there's another question around access control and whether we can go through some of that. Yeah, we can definitely do something that shows how Candid can be used for external authentication and some basic amount of access control. It's effectively machine-wide access control. Like you can control what group or what authentication provider in Candid can talk to a given LXD system, but you don't really get much more control than that. Then we can also show what you can do if you've got canonical RBAC, which is an additional service that comes for Ubuntu Advantage users. And that then gives you per project granularity on access on LXD. So we can definitely go through that and show kind of how that stuff works. Okay, for now, that VM is now ready, and we should see it update. Yep, so we've got 4 cores now, 8 gigs of RAM, still 1 disk, 20 gigs. So let's deploy something. For now, we're just gonna be doing deploy, and okay, fine, we can do 1804 on this one, I guess. And we'll do 2004 on the next, on whichever is the next one that's ready. If you want to keep an eye on what's going on, you can always attach with the console. So right now they're all running. VM01 is about to get started by MAAS. Like we see, it's powering it on. There we go. Now it's powered on. So if you do console VGA, you get to see it's currently start PXE over IPv4. It's pulling the bootloader and then the MAAS kernel in IntramFS, and will eventually show more stuff as it's doing the deploy. deployment is going to take a bit longer than the commissioning was doing, because it actually needs to write stuff to disk. The other ones are almost done with their commissioning, at which point we can deploy 2004 on one of them, and we'll do some slightly more advanced config on probably on one of the others, to just show how we can easily run containers then inside those virtual machines and have those containers also integrate with MAAS. And then it will probably be a wrap. Let's just see. So VM02, how far is it with commissioning? I suspect it's probably that last test, but maybe not. Yeah, not sure what it's doing. If you want to check more, you can always go to Events and then View Full History. And that actually shows everything from the time the machine was turned on to it getting files over TFTP, the PXE boot itself, booting the kernel, and then once the system is booted, running Cloud init to run all of the different tests and everything that it needs to run. So you can always do that to get some more details. Ah, there we go. So this one is now actually commissioning. And we get a bit of a sense as to how long things are gonna run. Like we see that most of them are pretty much instant. Some can take like up to 5 seconds, like the one we're currently running. There we go. And commissioning run is quick, and now we're doing the 50 seconds one. Now on the one that we're deploying, it looks like it's booted into the ephemeral environment that's used for the installer. And it's now running Cloud init, which will communicate with MAAS and download the installation code to then dump an image on that system effectively. While that's all running, one thing we can do that's always kind of fun is other operating systems. So let's just sync a CentOS 7 image as well. So we've got that ready when some of the other VMs are ready to use. Did it save the selection yet? Yeah, queued for download. Okay, so that's good to go. Now back on the machines list. Okay, so we see VM03 is done with its commissioning. Again, the number of CPU and everything has been properly updated, and the other two should be almost ready. So we're just gonna deploy 2004 on VM02, I think. Let's do that. So deploy. Go Ubuntu 2004 and deploy. Alrighty. Our 18041 is still busy installing. So now we see the what we're seeing on screen here is the installer. It's doing the partitioning. And you get the live state also showing up directly in MAAS here. So we see it was setting up storage. Now it's showing installing OS. You can get the same view of what's going on if you open it up and go into events. You can see that it's currently installing the OS. If you open the details, you can see even more. So it's currently writing the install source to disk. Earlier it was doing the formatting and some other bits. And here we can see exactly what it's doing, which is running rsync to copy the root file system onto the target drive. So that part is done. There's still a bit more to go because it needs to actually set up a bootloader, install the kernel, prepare an initramfs. Still quite a few more steps, but it's usually pretty quick installing machines that way. Especially if they're, like in this case, I'm dealing with like a nested virtual machine. That's not the fastest environment. In the MAAS that we run for the LXD team, we've got physical systems that deploy on very fast NVMe SSDs and take just a couple of minutes to install pretty much. Or we've got virtual machines that are also stored on very fast storage and can also just take a couple of minutes to deploy and be ready. But yeah, here we see it's now installing the kernel. So if we go back on that page and refresh, we should see probably some movement. Yep, got an installing kernel, so we see that it did. That actually gets you a pretty good timing for exactly how long the installer is taking. Like in this case, we started, so let's see exactly when the VM was booted. There we go. Node powered on was 7:35 UTC, and we're now at 7:40, so we're just 5 minutes later, and we're doing the kernel install. And looks like we're pretty much done with it, actually. Right, so it's now mounting everything. Looks like it's about to clean things up and just reboot, and we'll be done. One thing that's maybe to note there, when the virtual machine that you're attached to is rebooting, LXD will actually disconnect you. You'll never see an actual reboot sequence while being attached to the VGA console, because to apply VM config changes, LXD always wants a rebooting VM to actually stop. QEMU exits, LXD can reconfigure it if needed, and then starts back up. That makes it slightly annoying to remain attached, because you can't remain attached across a reboot, but like, the VM will still reboot, will still come back online, just you need to reconnect. Okay, it's doing all the unmounting, all the cleanup, so it's probably, let's see what it logs, but it's probably just about ready. Yeah, it's just configuring apt and configuring some bits of the system before it reboots. Let's see what the other ones are doing. Okay, so we've got VM 01, 02, 03 will do some special config, and let's see if we can do CentOS on 04 already, or if it's still downloading. Operating system, CentOS 7. Okay, fine, deploy that. Okay, so that one's gonna be deploying. During that time, let's go and edit VM 03. So you can do quite a bit of changes inside MAAS for how you want the system deployed. Like you could go in storage, and here we'll see that it's just gonna do basic partitioning with like a EFI scheme. So it's got a 500 megs EFI partition followed by 20 gigs of ext4 storage. But you could totally change that. There's really nothing that prevents you from doing whatever you want. So you can actually go and like, okay, I want to remove that drive, and instead I'd like to oops, it's not add special partition. It's here. I want to create a new partition here. So we add a partition, whatever size we want, whatever file system we want. In this case, I mean, I don't have any reason to do anything special, but you could definitely, well, I guess what we could do is do like 15 gigs, ext4 on slash, like that, followed by another partition. That's the rest of the space, and I don't know, let's put it as like XFS and put it on like /data. So you can totally do that kind of stuff. The part that's more interesting to us for LXD is gonna be on the networking side of things. Actually, you know what? On storage, I don't actually want that /data. I'm just gonna keep it unpartitioned. So I want the partition to exist, but unformatted effectively. That way we can feed that to LXD as a backend for a storage pool. Okay, so in this case, we see there's a partition SDA 3, that's 6 gigs large, and that's got nothing on it. That's fine. On the network front, we've got a single NIC here. It's called the NP5S0. For LXD, that's not super convenient because we can do like Mac VLAN on it, but it's not the best setup we could do. A bridge would be a lot more convenient to us. So let's see if we can do that. You can take the device here and then do a create bridge. We'll call the bridge BR0, that's perfectly fine. Then VLAN, we only have one, but we want to attach it to the IPv4 subnet and do a auto assignment for it, save. Okay, and so far we've not actually done any IPv6, so let's change that. If you wanted to do IPv6, the way it's done is you do add an alias. So it's an alias interface on top of that device, and then you do IPv6. And add, and you're gonna get an BR0.1, well, colon 1 device. And now we can do deploy, and let's do 2004. It's going to deploying. So we'll give that a little while. MAAS 01 is now rebooting. So as we see, we got dropped from our console, and LXD must be LXD or MAAS must be doing the power cycle right now. This goes quite a bit faster when you're not in a nested VM, kind of like what I'm doing right now. QEMU is quite a bit slower here than usual. I'm actually kind of surprised that VM01 is not starting back up yet. Not sure what's going on. Let's see if QEMU is still around for it. It's not. Okay, well maybe it needs a bit of help. Okay, that worked. So let's just attach back on it. This time that VM should actually be fully functional. It's Ubuntu 18.04, so we see it still boots over the network, but MAAS should just tell it to continue booting locally instead. Yep, there we go, booting local disk. And then onto grub. Bootloader has not verified loaded image, halting. Huh. Okay, so it's a secure boot issue. That's why the VM didn't start up. That's interesting. I would have expected 18.04 to do secure boot properly through MAAS, but apparently not. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna disable secure boot on that VM and start it back up. It's gonna be interesting to see if 20.04 and CentOS work properly, or if they also need secure boot disabled. If they do, then it might be because of the way MAAS sets things up that secure boot doesn't work so well. If that's the case, we can just turn it off in the profile, and that will apply to all VMs. But as much as possible, I'll try to keep secure boot enabled. It's always good to validate your bootloader kernel on boot time, but in this case, it didn't seem very happy about it. All right, so that should avoid that particular issue. Yeah, it's not failing this time. That's good. So we're booting up. What's the state of things? VM02 is also rebooting. Let's see if it did the same thing where it just stopped. Yeah, it looks like it did. Okay, so it's possibly some issue with MAAS and secure boot. Let's just turn it off globally in the profile. When you do that, you don't actually need it set on VM01 anymore, because the profile itself has it. So you might as well just unset it. There we go. I'm just gonna start VM02. And if we look here, VM01, do we have a login prompt? We do. Okay. So now you've got the IP for VM01. It actually pulled two IPs somehow. MAAS uses the Ubuntu user, so we should be able, because our SSH key was loaded, we should be able to just do that. Yep, here we go. So we're inside that VM, Ubuntu 18.04 LTS with 8 gigs of RAM, 4 vCPUs. So that worked properly. I would expect it to use MAAS as its DNS server. So while outside we can't do this because we're not using MAAS as DNS server, inside the VM that should work just fine. Just like it should be able to ping the others. Yep. Except that VM02 is not actually up yet, but it will be soon enough. And now, because that VM actually started properly, it should show us being deployed. Yep. We can go look at what's going on with VM02, which should be pretty much the same thing, but on 20.04 instead. Instance is not running. It was last time I checked. You can do show expanded to see the config with everything applied. And we see that secure boot is disabled, so that shouldn't be the problem. Well, actually, it could be the problem. The way we handle secure boot in LXD is we can't actually go and modify the firmware NVRAM easily. So what we do is that we reset it, but if we reset it at the wrong time, it could have actually written it back to being on. So what we'll do is we'll temporarily set it to true on the VM, and then we'll unset that key, which will force it back off. Sorry. Okay, so that should have properly reset its NVRAM this time around. And let's just attach the console directly during start. So I would expect it to boot properly now. It most likely just got caught in a race where its secure boot config got cleared just at the wrong time, and it wrote it back to enabled right afterwards. I expect the other VMs will probably hit the same problem, so we need to go and fix them too. Okay, so back to starting up, big C over IPv4, getting netboot, onto the bootloader. So far it's identical to what we saw with 1804. It's not very verbose booting Ubuntu, but we'll get there. Yeah, here we go. So kernel has been booted properly. We should be hitting Cloudinit soon, which should then tell MAAS that the VM has actually been deployed properly. And we'll show the status to match. Okay. The interesting thing with 2004 is that the LXD agent is pre-installed, so you can actually LXC exec into those as well as SSH, which is kind of interesting. Okay, so now MAAS is it's talking back to MAAS, so we see VM02 is now marked as deployed. Okay, let's play with it. So VM02 we can see here as it's so the CIP that MAAS assigned it, we can from it ping VM01 just fine. But as I mentioned, the interesting thing is that with 2004, we've got the agent pre-installed. That's why if you look at VM01, we only have the rig codes here that LXD knows about to some extent. So that IP is what LXD was expecting to be assigned by DHCP, but never actually was applied. And the interface name here is wrong because it can't run anything inside it. Like if we do that won't work. But with 2004, we've got an agent. That's why we see ENP580. That's why we see only the correct addresses. We don't see any of the temporary addresses that it could have used. And what else can we do? Like, that's as expected again, the right config, and it's running on 2004. Okay, so the real interesting one for us is going to be at VM03. So let's see just how far those got. Okay, they're both in rebooting. Let's go take a peek at VM03 then. Okay, let's see if it manages to boot or if it's just gonna fail at this stage. If it fails, we're gonna have to go clear its secure boot. Yeah, system compromised. Okay, so same issue. All right. Okay, it's stopped. VM03 security secure boot true, and we didn't set it. It would have been a lot smoother if I had set that directly in the MAAS profile right from the start, but I was hopeful. Devin console VG. So VM03, and might as well fix 04 immediately since apparently it's right about to hit the same issue. Maybe. I mean 04 is I think that's the CentOS one, so maybe it will behave differently. Yeah, it will behave differently in that it went straight into the firmware. Okay, That's a different way to fail, I guess. Yeah, so the drive boots straight back into the firmware. It's not bootable. Let's see if it's a general issue with the way MAAS deployed CentOS, or if it's also the secure boot causing us issues here. So insert VM04 security secure boot. And we start it back up. Okay, and that's VM03 is starting up. VM04 is booting now. Let's see what it does. Okay, so 03 is definitely booting fine now. Ubuntu 2004, so that one will be perfectly functional. VM04 is doing network boot, told to boot locally, and CentOS is booting. Okay, so it was also secure boot causing issues, just slightly different symptoms. All right, so VM03 is the one that's really interesting to us. So let's go take a look at that one. Just to check, MAAS should now show pretty much everything as being deployed. Okay, just 04 that still needs to talk back to it, but the rest is good. So we're gonna SSH into VM03 should just show one address now. Okay, it shows BR0, which is good. It also shows we've got a static IPv6 this time around. That's the only one that's configured for that, so that works. And now we're gonna be in there. So we're in VM03. We should have the LXD snap pre-installed, and we do. LXD 403 is pre-installed there. That's also the one that's got a slightly different partitioning scheme. So we should see, yep, SDA3 here is 6 gigs large. That's what we configured earlier in the web interface. So let's configure LXD on it. It's going to be a slightly different LXD in it than usual. So we still don't do any clustering. Storage, we're going to be using that SDA3 because that's why we created it for. So we create a new pool and we'll be using an existing Disco partition. So that's dev SDA3. Would you like to connect to a MAAS server? Yes, we would like that. What's the name of this host in MAAS? It's VM03, that's correct. And MAAS is at, let's copy paste that address here. So that's the address to connect to MAAS. And now we need an API key for that integration with MAAS. API keys are, I believe, over there. So we do API key. There's already one generated. That's nice. Let's just use that one then. API key. We'd like to create a new network bridge. So no, because we already have one. We'd like to use an existing bridge on this host. Yes. The name is called BR0. That's configured in MAAS. Is this interface connected to your MAAS server? Yes, it is. And now we need to enter the name of the IPv4 and IPv6 subnets. So if we look here, they're called MAAS-IPv4, MAAS-IPv6. So I'll do that. Okay. No need to make it available on network, and the rest of the settings are good. All right. So now we've got what feels like a normal LXD. Let's create a 2004 container. Let's call that C1. And then we'll see what's different with that, about this whole thing. Okay. Let's give it a few seconds to just get an IP. All right, so we've got a container called C1. It's got an IPv4 address. It's got an IPv6 address. And the thing that's interesting here is you'll probably notice that it's in the 1056.61. So that's the MAAS network subnet, which makes sense. It's bridged. But you can also do this. Of IPv4. It actually has a DNS record that's managed by MAAS. And if we were to configure it to do IPv6 properly, which it currently isn't, we would still have a working IPv6. And the rest of the integration here is you can go in MAAS, and if you click on VM03, there's a new tab here that doesn't show up on the others, which is instances. And when you click on that, you see c1.MAAS with the MAC address of the container and its IP address. And if we were to launch, so if we launch C2, and we go look at what's going on, yep, there we go. So the containers directly appear, they're visible in MAAS, and they pull an IP address directly from the MAAS subnets in this case. So if we go now look at what's going on our IPv4 subnet, we see the addresses that are used by the virtual machines, and we see the addresses that are used by the containers, and they are accurately reported here as being containers. And last thing, we're just gonna check that that CentOS. I believe that for CentOS you've got to do SSH as CentOS instead of Ubuntu. It would make sense. And here we go. We've got a CentOS virtual machine. If we do that release, that should show CentOS 7. Yep. And once you're done with everything on MAAS, you can just go here, take everything, and be like, I don't want those anymore. Just release them all. And that's gonna wipe everything. That's gonna shut them all down. All the instances here will just be stopped, and the DNS records and everything that were created for the VMs and the containers, they're all gone now. And those are ready to deploy whatever you want at a later point. MAAS also has like a CLI and API so that you can use it to directly deploy things on there if you want. And the interesting part is that it can drive hardware, so you can totally add Intel NUCs or servers with IPMI or whatever you want, and just add them on there and just manage both a fleet of virtual machines that can be hosted by LXD or physical servers all at the same time. And there's a lot more options. Like you can, like MAAS is meant to go at data center scale, where you can track multiple racks, you can do availability zones, you can group machines into different resource pools, and then give access to different people to different pools. It's quite powerful for machine management, and it's quite nice that it can be used to drive LXD virtual machines as well. All right, well, that's all I've got for today. Thanks for following along, and I hope you might have learned something there and might start using MAAS with LXD, or if you're already familiar with MAAS, then maybe consider starting using LXD with it. Thanks, and talk to you later.